Climate change, a very divisive issue that, of course, divides the line in American politics and also politics worldwide. And I wanted to address it for a very specific reason, because the conversation right now, especially around these climate change activists and groups, especially in the United Kingdom, is that, hey, guys, no one has taken us seriously because of this hippie language. And I wanted to make a rebuttal and talk about some actual things that are actually very impressive and actually very important around this topic. But guess what? It's not because of hippie language that people are not taking you seriously. Hippie language is not watering down the message. It's absolute lunacy that's watering down this message. I want to make that argument by highlighting what is happening in California and specifically what is happening in Canada with them already having a carbon tax. And then at the end, of course, cover an actual technological advancement, which I do believe is worth considering and talking about in a positive light and manner. But Jason, to me, I would make the argument that it's definitely not hippie language, but just insane political gerrymandering, emotional manipulation, showing you polar bears, which, by the way, the population of them is rising, but they'll highlight one polar bear that's skinny and struggling to survive and swimming. They'll show you so much disinformation, so much dishonesty. And what it ultimately really is here is a ploy to get your money to generate revenue for the state. That's my opinion. What do you think, Jason? Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I've never endorsed a carbon tax, and it's essentially because carbon is a force of life on the planet. It's what vegetation needs to breathe. I think there are a ton of real, very, very real environmental issues. I mean, we could talk about fracking, the positives, the negatives. Is that causing sinkholes, earthquakes, water pollution? That's a real issue. Pollutants into the air, a real issue, into our atmosphere, a real issue. Plastics and other trash in the ocean, real issues. But the issue that seems to be at the forefront is, well, at least in my generation, was global warming, which then turned into climate change based on CO2 and the rising levels of that CO2. So, Luke, I thought it was really interesting that you brought this story to my attention about the biosolar leaf project, because
before we get into that, Jason, let's talk about the absolute insanity. I sent you a little Facebook post talking about literally UN predicting a disaster if global warming not checked. This was in an article on June 29th, 1989. I just sent you this article on Facebook, by the way, saying that by the year 2000, it would be irreversible sea level changes. And, the world would be in a disastrous. The problem is, it's not hippie language. It's politicians trying to milk the emotional teeth that exist of the public to try to extort any kind of value and money from them. It's that absolute lunacy. I mean, they're doing it in California. They're doing it in so many different ways with banning certain things. But the latest attempt here right now is actually a voluntary effort, which I predict is going to fall flat on its face. But it's a voluntary effort where in California, the restaurants now could add a 1% surcharge to help fight climate change. Again, this is all voluntary. This is all going to an alleged kind of bureaucratic organization. I think it's a non-government organization that all this fund money is going to, and it's supposed to promote, helping climate change. We'll see. This is not that bad, to be honest with you, because this is totally voluntary. People participate if they want to participate. Sure, that's a good way, but that's not how politicians have used this. Politicians have went on the national stage like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and fear-mongered and said the world is going to end. Justin Trudeau has made, of course, similar epithets when it comes to climate change, and his country just recently, just a couple months ago, introduced literally a carbon tax on the people. And of course, where does the money go to? Well, it goes to, of course, government, and local states and governments and counties in Canada will decide what they want to do with it, of course. But Jason, people are being taxed on air, on carbon in Canada already. That is the discussion. And again, I would say it's politicians trying to extort mistruths as a way to get power and money. That's the biggest issues. And then stories like this, the BioLeaf story, are absolutely fascinating, and I do believe deserve some attention. Because again, Jason, what we're talking about here is the world's first biosolar leaf, which scientists are claiming could mop up carbon dioxide and discharge oxygen in the atmosphere, doing the work of 100 trees using the surface area of one tree. And then it cultivates phytoplankton, and it's on solar panel structures. This is a huge technological advancements, which I believe, yeah, let's talk about issues like this. Why isn't this the bigger conversation made here? Why aren't our attentions brought to this? Why isn't money being brought into this? Why are we being taxed on air and literally told we're all going to die in 12 years? That's the bigger case that I wanted to make here. Do you agree or disagree, Jason?
Well, again, if this was a focus plan, that's why I really like this story. You know, again, if they were true about this supposed carbon tax, which I completely disagree with, because again, there is no plan. It's everybody do with the money what you will. And some people are going to pay it, some people aren't. It's a tax on life. I know they portray it that only conservatives thinks it's a tax on everything. But listen, if we're talking about carbon regulation, and this tool can basically take in as much carbon as one tree 100 times, so 100 times that, in its size, think about that. We could put these things everywhere, and if it was really carbon dioxide that was the problem, we could clean it up rather quickly, I would think. But that's not what we're really talking about. We can't use this as a viable solution. So the moment that this becomes a viable solution, carbon dioxide will no longer be the talking point of climate change. Because guess what? In the 80s, Luke, it wasn't the talking point of climate change. It was aerosols affecting our ozone layer. You never heard about carbon dioxide. Okay? That was in passing. And now everything's about carbon dioxide. So again, this is great. If this biosolar leaf project actually does what it says, and carbon is such a detriment to the planet, we should employ this. And I think we can do so without a tax. That's the other thing they're not going to tell you.
Exactly. Oh, we can't regulate, we can't control you, we can't subjugate you, we can't extort you out of money. Yeah, let's not even talk about this BioLeaf thing. That's not important. Let's not bring. Come on, it's absolute lunacy. And you're right. They were talking about the aerosols. They did ban some of the aerosols. They were talking about your hairspray and your deodorant causing holes in the atmosphere. Now, of course, it's carbon dioxide. But again, they're missing the larger point here. Now, again, if you're talking about carbon dioxide and trying to knock that off, you have to understand trees are a big component in taking in the carbon dioxide. And some people make the argument that carbon dioxide is not even that big of a problem. But I would even entertaining that idea, I would even say that there has been a large, massive amount of deforestation. There has been a large number of garbage dumping, but garbage dumping specifically coming from countries in Africa, specifically coming from the countries of India and China, that of course no one really wants to talk about. But they want to tax you and regulate you when, of course, when we look at the Western world, they're some of the least polluting countries in the world. So again, you're not going to deal with the issue when China is dumping all of its plastics, when India is dumping all their trash into the rivers, which go into the oceans, which are having an effect. I mean, the ocean is extremely, extremely, extremely vast, and already we are seeing islands of trash build up. And I think that is a legitimate issue. That is something to bring up. That's why we talked about Boylan Slot. We interviewed him right after Bilderberg. We confronted him. We interviewed him. And I do believe there does deserve to be a bigger discussion. But hey, let's center it against solution-oriented topics like this instead of fear-mongering, taxing, regulating, and subjugating people. And if you agree with that, because again, I do agree, hey, we got to take care of the place we live. We can't just, like, I look at this, like, I live in Brooklyn. Literally, people walking down the street, they're drinking something, they throw it on the floor. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? But that's one aspect of what's happening globally on a larger scale that does need to be addressed, that does need to be talked about. And you can talk about it in scientific ways with articles like this that should be promoted instead of the absolute lunacy pushed by Trudeau and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other bloodthirsty ticks that want to suck off any decency, blood, soul, and human spirit that you have inside of you. Sorry, I get a little passionate about that, but that's my take on it. Anything else you want to say, Jason? And should we close it off soon?
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with you. You can't just tax something that we all do. and have no control over doing. We don't. If you want to live, you got to breathe. And we're not the only things that breathe, folks, and I get it. It's how many cars you have and how much energy you're using. Your carbon footprint really important. But, again, if this device works, why is it that important at all? I don't need to be extorted by the government for being alive. That's already bad enough. Guys, we're doing 4 videos across 2 different platforms, 3 on the backup, 1 on the main. Please subscribe to both Pulse Change and We Are Change. Ring that notification bell. Share this stuff on social media. Grab a t-shirt. Make a donation. Make We Are Change possible. And get out there and be the change you want to see in the world.